This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening to you. It's 7:04 on LBC. Welcome to the programme. 3 hours of politics tonight, and we're going to start off talking about Donald Trump, because we haven't done that for some time, have we? It must be nearly 2 weeks. Anyway, the big news today coming from the United States, well, as far as the United Kingdom is concerned, is that President Trump's multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against the BBC over the editing of his speeches in that Panorama programme has been set for February 2027. So we've got a year's speculation about whether it'll actually go ahead. Now, the BBC, probably thought this case would be thrown out, but a Florida judge has rejected their attempt to put off disclosing internal documents relating to this episode of Panorama that contained the spliced version of Trump's 2021 address. Now, Trump made the speech in Washington before supporters stormed the US Capitol. The BBC has apologised for cutting together two parts of the speech without making the edit clear to viewers, but it denies it defamed the president. Well, he's claiming $7.5 billion in compensation. Now, just to tell you what that would mean, that is 1.5 times the entire annual budget of the BBC. And remember, the BBC is funded by us, the licence fee payers. So effectively, it's us that would be paying money to Donald Trump. Now, I think he was wronged. And the BBC have apologised. I think a lot of people thought he wouldn't actually take it, and I'm still not sure I can really see this coming to court in February 2027. But the BBC now has a choice. It can either decide to fight this case to the bitter end and risk having to come up with $7.5 billion, which would effectively bankrupt it, or it can enter a sort of an arrangement where there's a compromise, where they could say, well, look, we're not admitting liability, but here's $2 billion. What do you think the BBC should do? Should they fight Trump to the bitter end or come to a compromise? 0345 6060 973. Well, Simon Marks joins us, LBC's US correspondent. He's live in Washington, D.C. Simon, very good evening to you. Is this a surprise to you?
Well, it's not a tremendous surprise, Ian, because there is still every possibility that the judge in this case is going to throw the lawsuit out. The judge is just not doing that now. I mean, what the BBC was engaged in here was an effort to avoid the whole process of discovery. And for anybody that has ever watched any kind of criminal trial on American television, you will know that there is this process of discovery whereby lawyers for both sides are required to share every document that they've got in their possession relating to the case at hand, whether criminal or civil. So the BBC was saying, well, hang on a second, there's no point in even engaging in discovery where we have to hand all of our notes over to the Trump side and the Trump side has to hand all of its evidence over to us, because we're going to push for a very, very early dismissal of this lawsuit by arguing that Florida doesn't have the jurisdiction to hear the case, because the BBC says that Donald Trump has not proved that a single person in Florida was in any way aggrieved by that broadcast of Panorama, nor that a single person in Florida changed their vote as a result of that broadcast of Panorama. What the judge in the case is saying is, well, the process of discovery has to go ahead because the trial is going to begin on February the 15th, 2027, and only then will the judge begin to hear arguments about whether or not the case should be dismissed. I mean, this does suggest that Donald Trump has sort of won half a round in that it indicates that the judge isn't throwing his criminal complaint back at Trump's lawyers and saying, you've got to go and rewrite this thing, which is what a judge did when Donald Trump launched a lawsuit against the New York Times seeking $15 billion in damages. Just on the numbers, by the way, the situation for the BBC is potentially even worse than $7.5 billion. Trump is seeking $10 billion. So it's £7.5 billion that they might maybe one day have to come up with in order to pay Donald Trump were Trump to win this lawsuit completely. But we are still a very long way away from that. This is just the beginning, as you can tell, of what is going to be a very drawn-out legal process. And on top, of course, of the money that the BBC is risking here as it goes forward with this process, is going to be now the vast amounts of money that the BBC has to shell out to lawyers who are going to be representing it even between now and February of next year when the trial gets underway. So that's going to be a hefty bill one way or another, because the one thing you can always be guaranteed about American jurisprudence is that it's always the lawyers who win.
So basically, even if the BBC wins the case, they would still have had to fork out maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. But one question I have here is, how does a Florida court have jurisdiction over this? Surely, if he wants to sue the BBC, he should be doing it in the High Court in London.
Well, that is absolutely the key question, because if you read the criminal complaint, reading the complaint as written by Donald Trump's lawyers, you are presented with a reality in which the BBC is a broadcasting powerhouse in the Sunshine State of Florida, which is simply untrue, absolutely beggars belief. And while there's lots of fulmination in the complaint, the civil complaint that Donald Trump is bringing about the impact of the transmission of Panorama in Florida and its opportunity to try and sway the opinions of voters there, I mean, there are some harsh realities. Number one, Donald Trump clearly won the Sunshine State of Florida. There is no evidence that anybody changed their vote as a result of having seen Panorama, nor is there any evidence that anybody did see Panorama. The complaint insists that that edition of Panorama was carried by BritBox, which is a web-distributed service here that allows you to peruse the best of programming from both the BBC and ITV here in the United States. The BBC says it was never on BritBox. So jurisdictionally, they think at New Broadcasting House that they've got a strong case to call for the dismissal of this lawsuit on jurisdictional grounds. And certainly courts in Florida have not always been friendly to similar court actions brought against the media by Donald Trump. But it's clearly a roll of the dice.
Simon, thank you. That's Simon Marks, LBC's US correspondent.